Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, John and Lee proudly present the greatest wrestling show ever!
Okay, guys, welcome to Series 2 of the greatest wrestling show ever. Hopefully, you've listened to Series 1 already, awesome as it was, where we created what we thought to be the greatest wrestling show ever by compiling different matches that actually happened from all eras of WWE to create a best show ever. So there was title matches, there was the best superstars. It was awesome, to be honest. If you haven't heard already, go and check it out. Series 2, we haven't quite decided on the format of, which is what we're going to be discussing in this episode 1 of Series 2. I do just have one request, though, Lee, that we don't have Matt Hardy in this series. Is that okay?
I knew you were going to pull that out.
I think I need to lay my cards out early because I know what you like. I know if I don't specify that there's no Matt Hardy, you'll start trying to sneak him in a little bit and think that I haven't noticed, and all of a sudden it's a series full of Matt Hardy.
Well, I'll let you tell Matt.
Okay, I'll send him a tweet. He got fired for emotive tweeting, Matt Hardy. Do you know that?
Really?
Yeah, so around about.
No.
So let me think. Put the time frame. The time frame won't be necessarily perfect, but 2005, he does get released for going public about the situation with Edge and Lita. He gets rehired shortly afterwards, squashed by Edge in their feud. Goes on to have a number of successful years in WWE. He's the ECW World Champion. He wins the US title, the tag titles with MVP. But by about, I want to say 2010, he's clearly unhappy again and he wants out. And he gets released off the back of a number of tweets, or what I mean, it might not have even been tweets back then, things that he posted on the internet that looked like he was having a bit of a nervous breakdown. I don't know how much of that was him working it to try and get released, how much of it was him actually going bonkers, but he's definitely got a track record for being emotive on social media. So I'll be honest with you, I don't want to be the one to break it to him that he's not in Series 2.
Well, to be honest, I mean, when he listens to this, I think he'll be happy anyway because we might not be including him in matches, but we've spent the first 1.5 minutes talking about him.
That is true.
So he's already the highlight of season 2.
He is, to be honest. If someone tunes into this and thinks it's shit and turns off, all they'll remember is it's all about Matt Hardy. On the off chance someone thinks it's not very good and doesn't listen all the way through the rest of Series 2. Okay, so what we need to figure out is how Series 2 is going to work. We have suggested a few ideas back and forth towards each other, which we haven't quite finalised, and that's what we're going to do now. Now, we've got a couple of options. What we'd originally suggested was to create a tournament where we have, say, 8 or 16, whatever wrestlers in, and we pair them off. And to me, that sounds good. Now, the problem is if we get to the point where wrestlers haven't faced each other. We might be able to find some random episode of WCW Saturday Night or, something on an independent years after they were actually famous, but there will be people that just haven't wrestled each other. Now, options I think we've got for that are you put people back into the hat, so to speak, until you get someone out that does. I create some sort of ridiculously complicated Excel spreadsheet which shows who's faced each other and we try and make it work from the start. Or if you put people back into the hat and it gets to the point where it can't work with them, they then get subbed in for someone else. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the way you could do it to force it to work is you could work the tournament backwards, but that would kind of defeat the object.
Yeah.
Because then you'd start off with 2 wrestlers and go back that way. The other thing that you could look at, which I think half mentioned to you, was some kind of league format rather than a tournament. And then if we're picking from if we focus on a particular era, which I'm guessing you might not want to do, you could almost guarantee that they've all faced each other. But we could work out some sort of system where if they haven't faced each other, they get maybe a draw or something to keep it fair within the league.
I think the potential difficulty with a league there is you've got even more potential for people having not wrestled each other. So whilst wrestler A may have wrestled wrestler B and C, if he hasn't wrestled D, E, and F, there's a lot of opportunity there for that not to work. I'm tempted by have a go at the tournament and just see what happens. If we have to take some people out of the hat, stick some people back in, make it work as we go along, I'm sure we can figure something out.
Yeah, okay. Well, maybe I mean, we could make it so that if we do come across two that haven't faced each other, find some sort of link so that they're at least facing, I don't know, the closest person possible.
Yeah, could they like tag out almost? So let's say, for
There you
example,
go.
the person in is Undertaker, and we find he hasn't faced whoever, but Kane has. He could tag out to Kane.
There you go.
Okay, that sounds feasible. I'm sure we could do some sort of connection. We could replace with, I don't know, the previous or the following NWA World Heavyweight Champion or someone else who's in that territory at the same time. Yeah, we can make that
Some
work.
sort of solid link.
Yeah, not just
Either
Matt
of-
Hardy.
Damn.
Okay,
6
right.
degrees
So,
of separation. I can make Matt Hardy fit in with anyone.
did you? I sent you a couple of months ago, and I don't think you replied. It was something like the Baconometer. It's a thing you can put in the name of anyone in, and it automatically works out that 6 degrees, 7 degrees, whatever it is of Kevin Bacon. And the thing to do with it is to try and get the highest bacon score that you can. So the most steps from. So you get some that you think, oh, these guys have never worked together, and you put the name in. And actually, there's 3 links because one of them works some random art house film with somebody that you don't know about. But I think the most degrees of separation you could get from Kevin Bacon was a 9, and there's only like a handful of 9s. They're a special breed.
A bit like a Google whack.
Yeah, I presume Google whacking is a lot harder now than it was when that first became a thing,
Much
like
harder.
years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, because there's a lot more on Google.
yeah.
I've got a
Google.
thing at the moment with my search engine. So on my laptop and on, I think it's Jamie's, but no one else's, it keeps turning back to Bing. I haven't asked it to turn to Bing. It just jumps back to Bing as the default search engine when you type it in the address bar. And I can change it back to Google again, but it keeps changing back again. Crackers.
What browser are you using?
Chrome.
How odd. Have you changed the default browser in your Windows settings?
Oh, I believe so. Yeah, I mean, obviously, I've not done something quite right, but this is obviously fascinating talk. But anyway, who bings? Does anyone actually bing anything? Is that even a term? Bing. People
Yeah,
Google stuff.
it's odd, isn't it? I know that's the default if you're using. Well, it's the default when you first open up Internet Explorer or Edge, as it's called now. There's the link to wrestling. Edge.
Alex, my wife, for those that don't know, she insists on Yahooing things like that's an actual thing. She even says that. She goes,
Whatever that big.
I think she's doing it to wind me up. She says, I'll Yahoo it. And I'm like, that's not a thing. Stop saying that. What are you doing?
Ask Jeeves.
Well, she might as well. If you're going to Yahoo it, ask bloody Jeeves. I think she likes Yahoo because there's like celebrity gossip around the actual thing that she's searching for. Whereas I like Google because it just gives me the thing that I'm after.
Exactly what you need.
Yeah, yeah. Anyway, we should return to wrestling. So, are we saying then? So, 8 entrants would give us 4 first round matches, then 2 semis and a final, 7 matches in total. 16 wrestlers would give us 15 matches in total. Should we go 16?
Yeah, because I think that's then more in line with season 1, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a similar sort of number, and 7 seems to be over a little bit too quickly. And are we going to try and get in wrestlers that we haven't got in so far? Or are we just going for the best ones?
Well, does anybody spring to mind?
Sting, Kurt Angle, Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar. There's a few there. We could go someone and actually do a good match of theirs, like Ric Flair, for example. We could re-include him because he wasn't really used particularly effectively in Series 1, was he?
No, he wasn't.
I'd be tempted to only go for ones we've used already if we really think it makes sense. I mean, you've got Andre the Giant, you've got Ultimate Warrior. I'm not saying that theirs will be particularly good matches, but that's not necessarily what we're looking for in this series, is it?
No, I thought we were going to decide between us 16 legends of wrestling.
Yeah, I think we should do that. Yeah. One thing I did, I think I messaged you rather than putting it on the podcast before, is we could do the worst wrestling show ever. We could go on like Dave Meltzer's list and find all the ones that had like -5 star. You've got the Doomsday cage match from Uncensored '96. I don't know if you've ever seen that, have you?
No, I don't think I have.
I remember watching it at the time. I don't actually remember thinking it was as quite as bad as it probably was, and people have remembered it. But it was Hogan and Savage against 8 heels. Straight away, you've got to be asking questions about who booked this shit. basically they're in a triple decker cage, I think it is. So it's a massive cage with a medium cage on top of it, with a smaller cage on top of it. And the idea is to escape the cage, but you essentially do that by gently walking out of it. So on the opposing team, there was Lex Luger. I think Flair was there, Arn Anderson. There was Tony Tiny Lister, who played Zeus. If you remember him.
Yeah, Zeus. SummerSlam '88.
Yeah, exactly. So he came back just for that. He forget what he was. He was called Z, as in Z, Gangster. You had Jeep Swenson, who played Bane in the original Batman films. He had wrestled a little bit, but was essentially just brought in because he was massive. He died of a heart attack shortly afterwards, age I think about 40. I think he was originally called the Final Solution. What do you think of when you hear Final Solution?
I don't know.
Hitler gassing the Jews.
Oh, crikey.
Yeah.
Wow.
So they renamed him the Ultimate Solution instead. Or maybe it was the other way around, actually. Either way, the version of the name that they called him was essentially what Hitler did to the Jews before they renamed him the slightly less offensive version. Anyway, it was shit. I think Hogan and Savage won after waffling the heels with tiny metal frying pans and then slowly walking out the cage.
I mean, as you described it then, as a concept, it sounded quite good. But it just didn't work.
Yeah, I think sometimes these things, I think you get something that is good, like a cage match, and you're tempting to make it bigger and better by adding more cage, more whatever it is. There's another one from, I think it's the Great American Bash in maybe like 88 or 89, where they have a similar but not as well structured multiple level cage, and it's incredibly wobbly. It's made of the same sort of mesh wire as opposed to the solid blue bars they had in WWF at the time, and you can't do much in it because it's wobbling around so much.
Yeah, I've seen them before. Yeah.
And what else could you include? Worst matches ever? I mean, I'm not sure. It'd be a bit of a slog, wouldn't it? We'd probably get halfway through the first episode and regret making that decision. I think we made the right.
Taker and Goldberg, and was it Saudi Arabia?
That was funny, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, I don't know if that was shit or just. Yeah, it just didn't work. It just went wrong.
Yeah, I mean, I think it was one of those where probably 90% of it was okay. It was that the botchers were particularly shit. It was the jackhammer where he nearly broke Taker's neck. It was the crap choke slam at the end. I think it was a spear that was pretty rubbish. I mean, there's a version of it set to the One Foot in the Grave theme tune, which is quite apt. It's back into Goldberg is for the Rumble, is that right?
That's right, yeah.
Facing Drew
McIntyre, yeah.
I quite like the little, I say pull apart, they weren't pulled apart, but the little thing they had on Raw the other week. I only noticed like a 2-minute clip where Goldberg pushes Drew over, Drew gets up and nuts him. I liked it, and that it actually looks real, because half the time nowadays I find in WWE is the reactions of superstars don't really see, it seems like someone playing a character.
Yeah,
it doesn't seem like anyone would actually react that way. They stand up and they get the microphone and they give this big long spiel that no one would actually say in real life. Someone used to watch Dawson's Creek. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
No one spoke like that in real life.
Movie from reality.
Yeah, it's like you got the basic concept, you understood the situation they were in, but people didn't speak like that, and people don't generally.
Not teenagers, anyway.
Exactly, yeah. Whereas I think Drew laughed off Goldberg as being like fighting his dad, got pushed over, and gave him a proper little nut in the head. It wasn't one of these big rear up Glasgow kisses. It was a little one like you might actually give someone in a bar fight.
I was saying to Harry, I can't believe it's a year since that Royal Rumble of Brock Lesnar, of course, and then Drew put him out of the ring.
We last year, for anyone else listening, I knocked up in a bit of a IXL geeky sort of fashion a thing we could use to do predictions for the Rumble. Basically, I think we picked 5 numbers each, and then there's various criteria. You lost points if you were in and out within a minute. You gained points if you were in for a certain amount of time, for eliminations, for skinning the cat, all things like that. And I'm half tempted to use it again this year when I'm watching, but then I'm also half tempted to not even bother watching it.
Oh, really?
It's hard. I find it hard with the empty arena. It just,
yeah.
It's just a reminder that it's not real. like I know it's not real because I did it 351 times myself. But I find when you're watching it with the crowd, you can allow yourself to get drawn into it.
Get drawn into it, yeah.
When
That's
there's no one there, it just seems like two people pretending to fight.
I registered for the Thunderdome,
Uh,
and I got invited to go and watch Raw this week, just
all
gone.
right,
So I could have been there on Zoom.
all right.
But then I kind of started reading into it a lot more.
Did they own your soul if you sign up for it?
We weren't that. It was first of all because obviously I would have wanted to get Harry involved,
Yeah.
but you only have one person on screen.
Okay.
And then I was reading into it, and people are saying it's pretty much like just sitting at your laptop and watching an episode of Raw.
Oh, it will be. Yeah.
And also, if you stop cheering or booing for any sustained period of time, you get kicked off.
Yeah.
And you sat there for 3 hours. One guy went to the toilet and came back and found he'd been kicked off because he left the seat. So I thought, it doesn't really sound worth it.
Does the view you get on that, is that the view from that particular camera? Is there like a camera built in, or is it just the general view?
That's what I mean. So I imagined, say your screen is ringside, you've got the ringside view, but no, from what I was reading, it's like you're getting the camera view like you would on the telly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe you can see other people as well who are in the same Zoom meeting or whatever it is. But yeah, it just didn't sound appealing when I read the feedback from other people that had done it.
I can't imagine it's all that much fun, to be honest. Have you seen what?
If it was 8 o'clock at night, yeah. Well, I'm not getting up at 2 a.m. for it. So
have you seen what some people have done? Like they've been on screen and held up pictures of an animal being beheaded or of Chris Benoit and things like that.
Yeah, I've heard of things like that happening.
Yeah, bound to happen really, isn't it? You invite. I mean, to be honest, the average wrestling fan isn't necessarily the sort of person you want to have.
There's no need for that, though, is there? It's like,
no, of course not.
Anyway.
Right, so we need to decide on 16 wrestlers. Now, obvious ones that we haven't used before, I'll just make a few notes. We've got Randy Orton, we've got Brock Lesnar, we've got, who did I say before? Who?
Sting.
Oh yeah, Kurt Angle, Sting. How far back are we going? We're going for like the likes of Harley Race, maybe Terry Funk, something like that. Terry Funk match would be good, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Maybe not Harley Race, because no offense to him, I don't think his stuff's aged all that well. I'm sure it was great for the time, but Terry Funk stuff I could probably still watch. A Harley Race match, I'm not convinced about. Who else didn't make the cut? Yeah, Andre the Giant, Ultimate Warrior. Who else we got?
Right, do you know what? We might be able to come up with 16 here that just didn't appear at all.
Yeah, potentially. Who have you got from the modern wrestler? You've got. Did we have Roman Reigns has been the biggest.
Roman Reigns, I was going to say.
Yeah, biggest name in wrestling now for several years. Anyone else particularly from the modern game, or are we just doing singles matches? Is that the plan? And is it just guys? It has to be just guys, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. It's the only way it can work.
Yeah, Series 3 could be a tag version of it. Yeah.
Right, who we got?
I might put Ric Flair down because I know we have used him, but I don't think we've really used him to his potential. We could always drop him out if we need to again. So we've got there 9 already. Orton, Lesnar, Angle, Sting, Funk, Andre, Warrior, Reigns, Flair. Who else? Who's got the most world titles? Edge. We haven't used Edge other than in TLC. I could pencil him in. Kane, Big Show. I mean, they've been around a long time, but they are a bit shit. So what do you think about that?
I'm not overly keen at either of them two, to be honest.
Kane's never done anything for me either. Like, it's just a bit too cartoony almost. And I know he doesn't necessarily present all of his stuff as cartoony, but again, I can't watch him and actually think it's.
The best thing Kane has ever done is turning up to Undertaker's farewell in full costume.
That was brilliant, wasn't it? When he got tricked by the rest of the boys when he came out, and he was like, "Oh fuck's sake, what have I done?" It's like when it's comic relief when you're 13 and everyone says, "Oh well, yeah, we're coming in fancy dress. Come in to school." Fancy dress.
What about Mr. Perfect?
Oh yeah, I like that, Mr. Perfect. When Kane electrocuted Shane McMahon's testicles, that was quite good, wasn't it? Have you seen that?
No.
I think I might have sent you a gif of it at one point. So in storyline, obviously, he handcuffed or tied Shane McMahon to the ring post. So he's on the outside of it. I think stood on maybe just like the bottom of the ring steps, one step, handcuffed, hands up above his head to the ring post. And Kane attaches essentially jump leads, like you might get your car going with, to Shane's testicles, in essence. I mean, his trousers, obviously, and then zapped him.
Brilliant.
Yeah, that was pretty good. We could put Shane McMahon in for a laugh.
I do like some of his matches. He's a daring individual, that's for sure.
He is, and I'm always torn on him. Again, to me, it's just a reminder that it's a work. It's like,
Yeah, that's the problem.
it's the boss's son. He's 50. He's a bit pudgy. Fair enough, he's brave and does some good moves and all that. But no part of me thinks that in a real fight he would stand any chance with any of the guys he's in against.
Yeah.
His stuff looks, or at least makes me feel like it's been planned and rehearsed, which I know it all has. I'm not daft, but if that you've been reminded of that all the way through, it's like watching maybe like a bad soap opera where you can tell they're acting.
Yes.
The difference between that and a good soap opera where you know they're acting, you're not daft, or Game of Thrones or anything like that. You know it's not real. You're not stupid, but it's good enough that you allow yourself to be drawn in. Absolutely. If you can see, the puppeteer holding the monster in the background, or someone reminding someone of their lines, it just takes you out of the moment, doesn't it?
Yeah. Well, Jericho.
Yeah, I'm not a massive fan, but go on then. Let's put him in.
Well, I was going to say Roddy Piper, but I know you don't like him, so.
Oh, well, I'll pencil Piper in. I don't dislike Piper.
I thought you weren't a fan of his.
I'm not a fan, but I don't dislike him. There's a difference between not being a fan and disliking him.
Oh, fair enough.
Like, I can't think of any of his matches that I would particularly choose to watch, but that doesn't mean I dislike him. And I think most people would agree his act was more about him as a character and a persona than it was his matches.
Daniel Bryan?
We did have Daniel Bryan in the last one, didn't we?
Did we?
The Miz, US title.
Oh, of course.
Night of Champions 2010.
Yeah.
We could, I tell you what, this is a twist and a half. I was going to say we could include like Chris Benoit and then actually just try and make it up 16 of the worst wrestlers, the murderers, the rapists, all the most horrible people that have been in wrestling. Or should that be Series 3? That'd be easier than this. I could rattle off 16 of them off the top of my head, no problem.
Scott Hall.
Oh yeah. So, but we can't put him in against Shawn Michaels unless we include Shawn Michaels. What about Kevin Nash, Diesel, Goldberg? I mean, Goldberg had some good stuff in WCW, didn't he?
Yeah. What we need to start bearing in mind here is that obviously it's eras. So, for example, wrestlers like Mr. Perfect, for example, we have limited choice on who we went up against.
You do, but we have got a relatively, most of these people were active between, say, the tail end of their career in 1990, start of some of the other careers. You've got mostly, even if you exclude Roman Reigns, you're probably looking at early noughties. You're looking at a 10, 12-year window there. Roman Reigns is the only one that really takes it much more modern than that. Yeah. I think we can make it work. I've penciled Kevin Nash in. Just reminded me a little thing that'll tickle you there.
I've got 16 written down. Go on, sorry.
That might be perfect. Let me just check what I've got. So 3, 5, 7, 10. I've got 16 as well, yeah. So a little thing that might tickle you is in the early sort of noughties, if you will, even though that's a rubbish name, very popular on the UK wrestling scene was tribute shows where people would dress up as a fake Undertaker or fake Kane or what have you. And there was a fake Razor Ramon who was generally known as Fraser Ramon.
Nice.
And a fake Diesel that everyone called Kevin Rash. I think mainly just to amuse themselves, not for promotional purposes. Right, so if that's what we're going for, we've got Orton, Lesnar, Angle, Sting, Terry Funk, Andre the Giant, Ultimate Warrior, Roman Reigns, Ric Flair, Edge, Mr. Perfect, Chris Jericho, Roddy Piper, Scott Hall, Goldberg, Kevin Nash. It's probably going to be relatively easy to get that to work. Is there anyone from earlier, so say that probably the only person we've got really from before 1990 is Andre, Terry Funk and the Warrior. The only person we've got really from in the last 15 years, as in, came about in the last 15 years, is Roman Reigns. Anyone that we're missing out? Anyone that was big in, say, TNA or Japan or WCW that isn't an obvious one that's jumping out to us? You've got people like the Great Muta, you've got Jushin Liger. Nah. A little fun fact for those of you listening at home, the other day when I was looking for inspiration for this, I looked on the history of the PWI 500, the Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine's annual list of the top 500 wrestlers in the world. And I was looking at the people that had made the most appearances on it, because that gives me an idea of people who've had long careers and therefore have potential to have faced multiple generations of wrestlers. And I messaged Lee, and he didn't read the message properly because he's a bit of an idiot, but saying, who is the American that has made the most appearances on the PWI 500? Lee said Jushin Liger because he cheated and looked and didn't read that I was asking for an American.
That's something real.
Cheated and did it wrong. But the American that's made the most appearances in the PWI 500 with 27 was Tommy Dreamer. Do you know who Tommy Dreamer is?
No.
I know, mad, isn't it? He was in ECW from the early 90s until he folded in 2001. Came to WWE for several years, maybe through to maybe 2010. And then he's been in TNA. He's got his own promotion, House of Hardcore, which is basically just a ECW revisited. I don't know if it's still going, to be honest. It might have stopped years ago for all I know. But I suppose he has been active all that time. And if you're looking to make a list of the top 500 wrestlers in the world, you've kind of got to include everyone that's active and well known, to be honest.
Just looking at his face.
Have you seen who he was married to?
But interestingly enough, when I typed Tommy into Google, the first suggestion was Tommy Dreamer.
Okay.
Spouse, Beulah McGillicuddy.
Yeah, Beulah McGillicuddy. She was his a character on ECW with him in the mid-90s who he ended up marrying. Definitely punching above his own weight there. Wow. Yeah, indeed. However, having Googled that the other day, I realised that they've separated since and he's now with somebody else. But maybe he's got a nice personality.
Yeah.
Bless him. Right, so we're saying then that's the 16, are we? Randy Orton, Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Sting, Terry Funk, Andre, Ultimate Warrior, Roman Reigns, Ric Flair, Edge, Mr. Perfect, Chris Jericho, Roddy Piper, Scott Hall, Goldberg, Kevin Nash. Go on then. Why not? Why not?
Yeah, why not?
And are we going to try and make it work almost? Are we going to try and see what our obvious matches up? We could do that off podcast before next week.
We've got two options, haven't we? We can work out to make it round one as best as possible with everybody involved.
Yeah.
We could try and do it randomly, or we could even try and work in some sort of seeding system. But then that'd be a whole other episode working out 1 to 16 in terms of who we class as the best wrestler.
I reckon we make round one work. There's a few that are jumping out to me there. Terry Funk, we can only really put. He's definitely got Ric Flair. He may have wrestled Sting. We're not going to get much else out of him there, so we're probably going to have to put him with one of them.
Who won when
So with that, do we go for their most famous, well-known matches? So, for example, Terry Funk and Ric Flair had a very famous match in late 1989. I think it got 5 stars at the time. But then they will have wrestled each other probably a number of hundred times at least, of which I should imagine several will be available on YouTube. Do we go for the most well-known match they've had or just pick a random one?
Well, we need to find one that Ric Flair wins.
Need to make sure Ric Flair wins, is that what you're saying?
Well, kind of, just to try and kind of make the tournament work. Because
I thought you meant who wins the whole tournament.
No, just because we're already struggling for competitors for Funk.
Okay.
Whereas we'll find it easier with Ric Flair. So do we need to take that kind of approach to every single match?
I think let's judge each one individually in terms of the match we pick. So for something like Flair and Funk, there's a really obvious one. There's one really famous match they've had. We haven't covered it. We haven't covered any NWA stuff from anything from that time period. So that makes sense. For something like if we end up with, say, I I don't know, Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar, maybe try and be a little bit different rather than going for the obvious WrestleMania main event. Maybe try and pick something, a match they had on Raw or something like that. I think
I think if we're taking that approach, we should pick what is known to be their best match.
Best match or biggest match? What do you reckon? Most well-known one?
Should we say biggest? Because we've already covered the whole. We've done the best, haven't we? Should we say biggest?
Yeah. So we'll try and figure out what is their biggest, most well-known match where we can make that work. And if not, I mean, it'll always be their biggest match, I suppose, even if it's a random episode of Raw or something like that.
Yeah.
And shall we, while we've said it, shall we go for Terry Funk versus Ric Flair next week?
Yeah, I've written that down.
Cool. Good a start as any. And we'll figure out between now and then what the second match was going to be. Okay, guys, listen, I hope that is the end of episode 1 of Series 2 of the greatest wrestling show ever. It's now arguably the greatest wrestling tournament ever. As always, I hope you enjoyed that. Tell your friends, comment and stuff on Facebook. See you next week.